Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we will hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7, Text 11. I'm not. Maybe my hearing aids aren't set right. I can't hear.
He's just saying that we do, before we chant the verse line by line, we chant word by word.
Oh, sure. Okay. Actually, what I often do is I'll chant each pada, word for word, and then the pada. But we'll just go through it word for word. Iti uktas tam vihayendro Devarsher Manayan Vacha Ananta Priya Bhaktyainam Parikramya Devam Yayao Ityuktastam Vihayendro Devarsher Manayang Vacha Anantapriya Bhaktyainam Parikramya Devang Yayao Ityuktastam Vihayendro Devarsher Manayan Vachaha Anantapriya Bhaktyainam Parikramya Devang Yayao Ityuktastam Vihayendro Devarsher Manayang Vacha Anantapriya Bhaktyainam Parikramya Devang Yayao. Others, please. Anantapriya Bhaktyainam
Ityuktastam Vihayendro Devarsher Manayan Vachaha Anantapriya Bhaktyainam Parikramya Devam Yayao.
Ityuktastam Vihayendro
Devarsher Manayan Vachaha Anantapriya Bhaktyainam Parikramya Devam Yayao.
Any interwebs attendees? Okay.
Ityuktastam Vihayendro Devarsher Manayan Vachaha Anantapriya Bhaktyainam Parikramya Devam Yayao.
Anyone else? Once, twice? Word to word, iti, thus, uktaha, addressed, tam, her, vihaya, releasing, Indra, the king of heaven, Devarashe, of the saint Nārada Muni, manayam, honoring, vachaha, the words, anantapriya, for one who is very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhaktya, by devotion. Enam, this woman. Parikramya, circumambulating. Divam, to the heavenly planets. Yayao, returned. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When the great Saint Nārada Muni had thus spoken, King Indra, being respectful to Narada's words, immediately released my mother. Because of my being a devotee of the Lord, all the demigods circumambulated her. Then they returned to their celestial kingdom. Responsively, please. When the great Saint Nārada Muni had thus spoken, King Indra, being respectful to Narada's words, immediately released my mother. Because of my being a devotee of the Lord, all the demigods circumambulated her. Then they returned to their celestial kingdom. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Although King Indra and the other demigods are exalted personalities, they were so obedient to Nārada Muni that King Indra immediately accepted Nārada Muni's words concerning Prahlad Maharaj. This is called understanding by the Parampara system. Indra and the demigods did not know that a great devotee was in the womb of Kayādhu, the wife of Hiraṇyakaśipu, but they accepted the authoritative statements of Nārada Muni and immediately offered their respects to the devotee by circumambulating the woman in whose womb he was living. To understand God and the devotee by the Parampara system is the process of knowledge. There's no need to speculate about God and His devotee. One should accept the statements of a bona fide devotee and thus try to understand. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Chapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ityuktastam Vihayendro Devarsher Manayam Vacha Anantapriya Bhaktyainam Parikramya Devam Yayao. When the great saint Nārada Muni had thus spoken, King Indra, being respectful to Narada's words, immediately released my mother. Because of my being a devotee of the Lord, all the demigods circumambulated her. Then they returned to their celestial kingdom. So we see a couple of things here. One is what culture looks like what real elevated culture looks like. And one of the most prominent features of an elevated culture, of an advanced culture, of a progressive culture. Sometimes we see in the Bhagavad Gita the worse of the Yud. God, I feel like Donald Trump. The use of the word Arya or Aryan, and that has some connotations over the last 80 years or 80, 90 years that are a little uncomfortable sometimes. But what Aryan really means is a spiritually progressive culture. It doesn't have to do with where people were born or what kind of DNA they have necessarily. It has to do with actually more the DNA of the subtle body. And a prominent feature is respect. And we see mutual respect, just as I was mentioning the other day when I was giving class in Los Angeles from the third canto, must be the third canto, the exchange between Swayambhuva Manu and Kardama Muni. There was this mutual respect, and there was this. They each had a desire to do whatever they could to promote the other's project, so to speak. There's a phrase that Srila Prabhupada used in his purport, Bhakti Karya, and he said that this is that kind of respect. I looked for that phrase in the Vedabase, and I only found it one other place, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, a phrase, Shuddha Bhakti Karya, to indicate pure devotional service. So this is a really spiritual, progressive culture. Nārada Muni didn't need to present some extended argument. All he had to do was show up. First of all, Nārada Muni. Everybody, especially among the Devas, he's called in this verse Devarshi, so he's the Rishi among the Devas. And everyone knows who he is, and everyone knows the weight that anything he says carries. How do you recognize Nārada Muni? Well, the Veena and the blonde dreads. This is something I've thought. I remember when I used to go surfing or bodyboarding, or even just swimming in the ocean at here in Pacific Beach. A lot of the cars parked down by the beach, they'd have these red, gold, and green stickers in the back, with the Lion of Judah, Jah Love, that kind of thing, These are all like, blonde surfer freaks with dreadlocks, and we know why they think they're Rasta men. But I was thinking, if we could let them know, Nārada Muni also has golden dreads. He's presented in the 10th canto, in the 70th chapter, I think it is, where Nārada Muni visits all the different palaces that Krishna keeps in Dwaraka. And he's described as having yellowish or golden jata, dreadlocks, matted hair. So when Nārada Muni shows up, people know that it's time to pay attention. There was just recalled to mind some old TV ad about one of those financial advisor companies. When so-and-so speaks, everyone listens. Ian Hutton. E.F. Hutton. I don't see how much attention I paid. This is why I never had any money, because I didn't listen to E.F. Hutton. Pardon? Of course. I remember our godbrother Atreya Rishi used to work for a big accounting firm that no longer exists because of some improprieties and things. I don't remember the name of it, but that's neither here nor there. So all Nārada Muni had to do was say, as we saw, stop. Even though this is the wife of Hiraṇyakaśipu, the child she's carrying is not another Hiraṇyakaśipu. He's actually a pure devotee of the Lord. And then as we see, Nārada Muni is going to ensure that, that Prahlād becomes a great devotee of the Lord, because he's going to give instruction. He's going to give shelter to Kayādhu, and he's going to give her good instruction in Bhagavat Dharma. And Prahlād is going to hear that in the womb. And we know now this is something that we're more aware of maybe the last few decades than maybe our folks were. When my mom was pregnant, she probably smoked and drank and listened to big band music. I was going to say bebop music, but probably big band music. And, and so here I am, messed up as I am. But nowadays, people are more aware that, that the hearing is developed, in the child within the womb fairly early. And then we also know that the hearing is among the last sense, well, pretty much, as I understand it, the last of the senses to go when someone's dying. So I remember when I went to spend my father's last few days with him, when it was really clear that this was the time, I sat with him, I held his hand, and I started singing Hare Krishna to him. And then I realized what I was doing after a little while. I was thinking, oh my God, I'm chanting to my agnostic father. And my dad wasn't like some soft agnostic, like, I'm not sure whether there's a God or not. My dad was a hard agnostic. Although I heard that he had softened somewhat at the end, that he started to think of himself as something of a Methodist again, and maybe God wasn't so bad after all. My father had a thing about God's character. This question of theodicy, the question of evil and suffering, was a big bugbear for my father. His first duty station when he was in my dad went to boot camp, Navy boot camp, on December 1st, 1941. And a week later, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and we were in a war. That wasn't what he signed up for. He wanted just to see the world and take pictures. So his first duty station out of boot camp here in San Diego was Pearl Harbor in February of 1942. And he was an 18-year-old kid from a farm on the central coast of California in Lompoc, and he was documenting the removal of the bodies of other 18, 19, 20-year-old farm boys from these wrecks of these ships. So that was pretty much it for him and God. So here's my agnostic father, and I'm sitting here holding his hand, chanting Hare Krishna to him, and I told him, Dad, I'm not doing this to tick you off. I'm not doing this to convert you. I guess this is what I do when someone I love is dying. And I kept chanting even for about half an hour after he drew his last breath, because I thought, well, I'm here, I'm doing this, let's get this right. So over the last few decades, we've had this idea. So people ladies like to have nice, pleasant sounds when they're pregnant. They listen to classical music or something like that, or they'll read great literature aloud, poetry or something like that aloud. And devotees, of course, they like to play kirtan or Krishna story tapes for their children, so that the kids, they get these sanskars from even before they're born. So Nārada Muni was going to ensure that his word was true. So when Nārada Muni spoke, the demigods immediately, they came pretty literally, I guess, with a vengeance. They saw an opportunity to seize their kingdom back, they'd come in, they had ransacked the palace, looted the palace, pillaged, I think was the word that Srila Prabhupada uses in an earlier verse. And this stuff happens. And they were ready to take out Kayādhu because she was carrying Hiraṇyakashipu's son in her womb. And Nārada Muni said, stop, and they immediately paid heed. And when they heard, oh, this is a great devotee of the Lord, then they not only stopped, but they actually circumambulated Kayādhu. And then they left. So another thing here, Srila Prabhupada brings this out, is how to understand spiritual knowledge. And this has been a theme over the last few days. So he says, when they heard Nārada Muni, they immediately accepted what he had to say because they recognized his authority. Just as the sannyasis, Prakashananda Saraswati and his cohort of sannyasis, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke, they recognized his authority. They were overwhelmed by his, not as much by his arguments as by his effulgence, right? Which kind of amounts to his character. In classical rhetoric, Aristotle's rhetoric, there are four things to keep in mind when someone is speaking or writing. So one is logos, the point you want to make. It needs to be presented logically, carefully. Also, pathos, which is the needs of the audience, especially their emotional needs. You have to figure out a way to appeal to them. In other words, we meet our audience where they are. I just noticed this morning that I have a text from one of the devotees I'm working with, and he is lamenting that he feels like he's been really excited the last couple of months. He came and spent how long in the temple in Honolulu? A few weeks? Jason?
Oh, Jason? Yeah. Oh, no, just a couple weeks he spent in the temple. But
Spent a couple of weeks in the temple, but when...
there for a week prior to, I think, from
And when he went back, he was just really excited about Krishna consciousness. So he's joined a group reading Srila Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion that I've been doing. This is something that I've been doing over and over again for years. It actually started when we lived on the Big Island. We did this in our home, and now, it's whoever's there plus whoever comes online. So we do it through Zoom. So this devotee wrote me that I guess because he's feeling very excited, and he's feeling, especially lately, feeling a little inspired by all the attention to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur because of the sesquicentennial anniversary. Lion Guru. So he found himself preaching perhaps a little fiercely, maybe he thought a little harshly, to an old, long-time, very close friend of his. And he feels that he might have put him off a little bit. Maybe he was coming on too strong. So Aristotle advises that we meet our audience where they are and then bring them gradually and gently along with us, unless it's these characters in Varanasi. Lord Chaitanya's argument was quite strong. If you read that 7th chapter of Adi Leela, it'll shake your heart. Some of those purports will shake your heart. Srila Prabhupada is so strong, talking about how they're doomed. A few years ago, when I was living in Kansas among a small devotee community near Lawrence, Kansas, we were, I think, Wednesday nights, maybe 2 nights a week, I can't remember now, we would read Chaitanya Charitamrita, get together and read Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we're going through that chapter. And we were like rocking back in our chairs, sometimes just cracking up at how strong Srila Prabhupada's language is. But generally, we want to kind of meet them where they are and bring them along. Because my sense is that what we call preaching is really sharing whatever bhakti, whatever shraddha we have with the others. So, I mean, I don't know what I have. I don't have a lot of knowledge. And I don't have a lot of bhakti, but I do seem to have some faith in bhakti, and I have a little faith in the instructions of my spiritual master. So I just try to share that with others as the best I can. So so we've got logos and pathos. There's kairos, generally not talked about much. Generally, people talk about 3, but there are actually 4 things that Aristotle addressed. The right situation. You need to understand what the situation is and speak accordingly. And then there's ethos, which is the character. Bless you. The character of the speaker. What is this person's authority? What right do they have? Who are you to tell me these things, right? So, in Greece, someone would introduce, my name is Gaius Huzi Watsits, and you know me well. I'm a big landowner. I have so many acres of farms and vineyards just outside of Athens, and I employ so many people, and I'm in the Senate. Oh, maybe it'd be a Roman in the Senate. And I've been a senator for a long time. I was a general when we defeated, the Goths and wherever, and so everybody would know. Okay, this guy's words have some weight. So Nārada Muni carries this weight. Rather than demanding respect, he naturally commands respect just by his character. Just as Lord Chaitanya, by his character, by his humility, commanded the respect of Prakashananda Saraswati and the sannyasis of Varanasi. So and this is how we understand spiritual knowledge. We hear from authorities. We don't have to experiment. Prabhupada sometimes talked about that. Just make this experiment. He would make a reference to a sort of an abbreviated version of the scientific method. And he would say the scientific method is experimentation and observation. So, you make a hypothesis, you experiment to see if your experience supports that hypothesis, and observe what happened, and then you make a theory based on that, and you see if it's reproducible. So Prabhupada would say, just give this one lifetime for practicing Krishna consciousness. It's just one life. It doesn't work out. You're going to have another lifetime to do whatever you want. Here's the trick, though. Bhakti is so powerful that when we let her in, it's game over, pretty much. It's just a matter of where the toaster is set before you're done, to see how soon you're done. Because, as I mentioned the other day, there's this verse that Srila Jiva Goswami cites in his Priti Sandarbha, that bhakti, only bhakti has the power to draw us near to Krishna. Only bhakti has the power to show us Krishna. Only bhakti has the power to control Krishna. Therefore, bhakti is the most powerful thing of all. So I was going to take a quick look at the early part of Madhurya Kadambini, but I have to earn my bribe and honor that. So I think that this is enough. Nārada Muni's words carried weight. The demigods respected him. We hear through this descending process. There are problems with trying to understand that which is inherently beyond the ken of the mind and senses, the ability of the mind and senses to comprehend. The senses can't really perceive the absolute truth, and the mind really can't wrap itself around the absolute truth. It's too big. God is just too big, too important, too powerful, and too busy, frankly, enjoying to respond to our summons that he appear in the court of our mind and senses and present a case for himself. Prove yourself to me. Rather, we let him show himself to us. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, don't you try to see God, but you try to act in such a way that God will want to come and see you. So we see that with in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, right? Dhruva Maharaj heard, again, from Nārada Muni, and followed Nārada Muni's instructions. He followed the instructions of his spiritual master. That's the key. Chaitanya Charitamrita says that the active principle in bhakti is following the instructions of the spiritual master. So Dhruva followed the instructions he heard from Nārada Muni perfectly. And within 6 months, he had become so powerful that the Lord was practically compelled to come personally see him. Because the power of his meditation and his holding his breath, it had really kind of like thrown everything out of balance in the universe. It had stopped the movement of prana throughout the universe, thrown things off balance. If he shifted even a little bit, it was like an elephant on a barge, or no, even better than that, an elephant in a canoe or something, right? That just really shake things up. So the devotees went to the ocean of milk and they asked the Lord, we've got a big problem here. People can't even breathe anymore. And he says, oh yeah, that's this devotee of mine. Let me take care of it. And so he went, broke Dhruva's trance, which perturbed him for a moment. But when he opened his eyes, he saw the identical form, the Lord in the identical form on which he had been meditating on Nārada Muni's instruction. So he got the Lord's personal audience and the Lord's personal blessing just through this descending process. He didn't have to go through some crazy bunch of experiments to try to find God. So this descending process is how God shows himself to us, how the absolute truth reveals himself to us. So if we submit ourselves to that through the parampara system, and this is possible, we see that in the 11th canto, this is possible only if we've completely let go of all our grasping, as the Buddhists might put it, for getting ahead in this world, enjoying in this world. I was in Facebook recently, and one of my godbrothers posted a cartoon of a guy with a pick, a guy in a prison cell with a pick. He made a hole in the wall. That's the first frame. The second frame, he's lying on his rack, snoozing comfortably as the air conditioner that he had installed in that hole in the wall keeps him comfortable in his cell. So unless we actually, as long as we are trying to make arrangements to be comfortable in this prison house, this durga, this place from which it's very difficult to go, then we're stuck. As long as we're stuck here. When we're willing to give that up, tasmad gurum prapadyeta jigyasu shaya uttama shabde parecha nishnatam brahmanyu pashamasham. Tasmat, there's an antecedent to that. That sage, I can't remember which one, Havi or Kavi. Some devotees, friends of mine, made me a little chart, a little graphic to help me remember, and I haven't memorized that little chart yet. I think it's either Kavi or Havi, it's one of the first two. Tells King Nimi, he explains to him how every attempt in the material world, every attempt to enjoy in the material world is ultimately futile, all the way up to the most intense of our pleasures, most consuming of our pleasures, which is sex. And then he says, when you've seen through all that, once you understood this, tasmad gurum prapadyeta, then you need to take shelter of such a guru, as we were discussing the other day. Okay, I'll stop here. Any questions, comments?
This whole pastime of Prahlad in the womb and Nārada Muni instructing. Many years ago, here in San Diego, we had a program, and I forget where it was and what the name of the couple was that we would go visit. But it was a regular program, weekly program, and the lady was pregnant. And I had recorded the Bhagavad Gita shortly after I arrived here in 1990, the whole Bhagavad Gita. with purports and everything. And I said, I'd like to give it to you, and you can just play that, you know, for the child in the womb, you know, because they could hear just like we had with Prahlad. And I said, okay, great, you know. So she did that. She's listening, you know, and doing her thing, and of course the child is hearing. So she would do that regularly, she told me. And then, so the kid was born, you know, and they would bring the little baby. And I remember, they would be, you know, going up and down the temple. I would be leading, when I would be leading kirtan, I often do on Sunday night. And as soon as the baby heard my voice, it was like, you know, she recognized my voice from recordings. And I said, well, this reminds me of this pastime. You know, it was really, really nice. You know.
Wonderful. Dharma?
I have two questions. One is about culture, because you mentioned this is a sign of advanced culture. Of course, people sometimes will argue that, well, there's just different cultures, and who are we to say this is a more advanced culture instead of that? Obviously, there's kind of relativism there, but who's to say what's a better culture? I like the Italian culture, someone likes the Japanese culture, someone likes this, that, and we're saying this is a better culture, so what do you tell someone like that? Is there an absolute standard, or because people kind of like, what's wrong with this culture, that culture? Everyone's got different ideas as far as culture. That's my first question.
Well, as far as that is concerned, you know, my sense is an advanced culture is a spiritually progressive culture, and that mutual respect is there. Italians nowadays, they may argue very passionately, but really what makes a culture advanced is not where it is or what language they speak or how they worship God or anything like that, but it's that mutual respect among people that we deal, you know, that we actually listen to each other. There's a devotee couple in the UK, Krishna Dharma and his wife, and they have a WhatsApp group called, I can't remember now. Anyway, the idea is that it's a place to try to get devotees accustomed to discussing things in a respectful way, where you listen first to the other person and you reflect back. We call it, sometimes it's called active listening. The Sattvato people call it dynamic listening. It's called, you know, it's called by different nonviolent communication. So, you know, it's really, you just listen and you reflect back before you share your own opinion. You want to make sure that the other person feels they've been heard, that you're going to respond to what they actually said. And it's a little, I haven't been able to participate because all of a sudden I find myself so far behind in any of the conversations that I'm not going to be able to do that reflection kind of a thing. But it's a really nice thing, and it's like a really good antidote to the kind of what passes for discourse that we find elsewhere on the internet, especially social media places like Facebook and whatever else there is, Twitter/X and not whatever. Because people are, you know, those are places where people just yell at each other. But if we deal with each other respectfully, if we have a culture that promotes that, that's an advanced culture. I don't care where it is or what it looks like. I mean, and that to me is something that lends itself well to being a spiritually progressive culture. That's an Aryan culture. Not whether they have blonde hair and blue eyes, or even whether they're Indian or anything like that. When Srila Prabhupada talks about that Aryan culture, he's talking about a spiritually progressive culture, one where especially there's respect for those who are pursuing and sharing spiritual knowledge. As I was mentioning the other day, in that exchange between Swayambhuva Manu and Kardama Muni, I was thinking it's the exchange that's really important. You know, in the Upadeshamrita, Srila Rupa Goswami presents these 6 exchanges of love among devotees. And also, even because those verses regarding Kayādhu Muni, Swayambhuva Manu was getting ready to praise Kayādhu Muni as a great Brahmana. But the Brahmanas have 6 occupations: Patana, Patana, Yajana, Yajana, Dana, Pratigraha. So they study the scriptures, they become scholarly, they become very well versed in the scriptures, but they don't keep that for themselves, they share it freely with others. They engage in worship, but they also teach and engage other people in worship. And they accept charity, but they also give in charity. Srila Prabhupada taught us that whatever charity a Brahmana is given in the course of a day of pursuing his duties, by the time the sun has gone down, he's given away whatever there is. They don't keep bank accounts. They're not going to have a Swiss bank account, or I don't know if we still have Swiss bank accounts anymore, but showing my age a little. So that's one thing. The dress isn't so much what determines whether a culture is advanced, but it's the heart, the core of the culture, which is respect. Does that help?
The other question I have was when I was in India, a devotee asked me, he had heard in a class that the backstory on Prahlad Maharaj, that he was also a gatekeeper in Vaikuntha.
Prahlad.
Yeah, and I asked Mukunda Dat, and he said he's never heard that, he would never repeat that. But has anyone heard what is the backstory of Prahlad Maharaj in his previous life?
Somebody in the Bhagavatam class said that might have heard.
No, he heard it, sometime previously, and wanted to know if I knew, and I asked Mukunda Dat, he said, don't repeat that. He said, never heard that one. So is there a backstory, who he was in his previous life? Where's the microphone?
Going around, I heard it several times, about how in previous life he was kind of a rake, and he was with some woman in the middle of the night, and they cleaned off a spot in the forest and did their thing. But maybe it was the Kadasi or something. And then it turns out that was the site of an old temple in the Sringadev that had become, it was the site of it, but you couldn't see it. And by that unknowing cleaning off, the thing, even though what they did there, eventually that accrued to where he became Prahlad. Have you heard something like that?
I do now remember having heard that. I'm not.
You're not to the point of wanting to repeat it in a class.
Well, because of my own training as an academic, I want to know what's the source.
Yeah.
How do you know? This is a question I would ask my students. They would make an assertion. I would say, how do you know? Just like we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, like 11. Krishnadas Kaviraj had been instructed by Jiva Goswami after studying with all the Goswamis, including Bhugarbha Goswami and Lokanath Goswami. Jiva Goswami had asked him to compile a text showing Lord Chaitanya's teachings and identity as they had heard it from Mahaprabhu himself, because there were all these splinter groups already, half a generation after Mahaprabhu's disappearance, in Bengal and Orissa. So he said, and write it in Bengali, because not all the Bengalis are big-time Brahmanas who can read Sanskrit very easily. And so about 11%, I think Tony Stewart pointed this out, about 11% of Chaitanya Charitamrita is in Sanskrit. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, I've minimized the Sanskrit as much as possible, deal with it. I
think, didn't he say, but whatever I did, I explained?
Yeah.
There's also that.
But the thing is, any assertion he makes, he has to support it from the Shastra, and the Shastra is in Sanskrit. So he says, this is how it is. I've minimized it as much as possible, and we see the same thing in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Rupa Goswami will make an assertion about bhakti, and then he'll use anywhere from 1 to maybe 4 or 5 verses from different scriptures to support whatever he says. So as we see in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that is the 5th verse that deals with austerity of speech. Srila Prabhupada says when speaking in spiritual circles, we need to support anything we say with scripture. And I don't know what the source of that is, so it's not something that I would be comfortable repeating. It's kind of a cool story about Ajñata Sukriti, though.
Yeah.
There's some appeal there. So it would be interesting to see if we can trace out a
I have
source.
some sources. I'll try to find out today.
Okay, cool.
But if I just one little quick story, it'll take 1 minute. And this is, we're working our way through the Bhagavad Gita. I mean the ERP, the editorial review panel, and the BBT editorial board, myself and Nagaraj and Kaishori. And we were on chapter 7, and the 4 kinds of pious people, Chaturvadha Bhajanta Manjana Sukhatanarjuna, Arto, Jigyasa Artarti, Gyanicha Bharatarshaba. So Prabhupada, he says Artarti, all those who are poverty stricken, they need money like that, But there's another understanding of that. It's also given by Baladev, and that is that Artarti means those who are after wealth. And the example is Dhruva. Dhruva wasn't a bhakta when he started, right? And so he was after wealth, and so Nārada Muni, seeing that desire, he gave him a method. You'll succeed. But by the time he had finished, chanting and doing all the things and all the austerities, he was a bhakta, and that's famous verse, Dhanabilasi, Swamin Kutosami Virangyach. So he was a perfect example of someone who was just, he's a little boy, and he was insulted, and so he said, I'm going to have the kingdom, So he ended up getting so purified, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, that he got darshan of the Lord. And he said, I don't want that kingdom anymore, But of course, he still got it, but he still had to do it. But he graduated, if you were, from being very pious and following Nārada Muni. But Nārada Muni always gives you exactly what you want, what you need in order to progress in devotion, But that Artarti, the example is that, someone who's after money, but they go to Krishna and they pray, and they can make spiritual advancement from that.
Thank you. Yeah, we see that in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Lord, Krishnadas Kaviraj has the Lord thinking, well, this foolish person has approached me for something material. He says, but I'm no fool. And make some arrangement. So we see that in the Bhagavatam as well. It's akama sarva kamova moksha kamudaradi tivrena bhakti yogi. So approach the Lord through tivra bhakti, intense bhakti, and you get whatever you want. But as we see with Dhruva, by the time you get it, you already don't want it. He expressed very strong regret. Bhichandra.
Thank you for the class. I have a question. You mentioned that we know it that when we satisfy our guru, then we will success. And we should follow instructions of guru. And my question should be some consequences of this instruction, how to say, what we should first do, what we should do first, second, etc., or no difference?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The question is about prioritizing the instructions of the Guru.
Oh, prioritizing the instructions of the Guru. Well, Srila Prabhupada says, of the instructions of the spiritual master, the foremost, the first, the most important, is to chant that fixed number of rounds every day. And for us, it's 16 rounds because that's his instruction. How many rounds that is it's a detail. But the principle is regularly chanting a fixed number of rounds of japa, and that helps discipline our mind. It makes everything else more auspicious. And as far as prioritizing, that's a really complicated question. There's a story that Giriraj Maharaj likes to share, how, and you see this in his books as well, Srila Prabhupada instructed him to write. He did some writing when he was in Mumbai in support of the project that they were developing there. And Srila Prabhupada liked Giriraj's writing, so he told him that he should write. And he wrote nice Back to Godhead articles. And then he had him doing other work, canvassing, collecting funds, things like that. And he was neglecting his writing. And so Srila Prabhupada said, we may sometimes defer the instruction of the spiritual master, but we can't neglect the instruction of the spiritual master. Therefore, I was a little excited. I don't know if this is actually going to really happen. When I was in Los Angeles last fall, I got a ride out to Pasadena for an evening home program that I do there from a devotee who was from Peru. And I mentioned, actually, Srila Prabhupada sent me to Peru 50 years ago, but there were some political problems in ISKCON, and I ended up not doing that. But Prabhupada had written me. So I've noted that you will be going to South America to spread our Krishna consciousness movement. Practically, this is our last unconquered continent, and I'm very happy to know that it will be developed by competent disciples like yourself. So my request is that you work very hard to make this perfection available to the people there. And I haven't been able to do that for the last 50 years. When I was in Costa Rica, one devotee said, well, you're in Latin America, but the letter says South America. So this devotee said, I think he's in Peru now, and I've heard he's, talking to people about getting me to Peru. And then I spoke with a godbrother from Brazil, because he wanted to know the real story of who were the first devotees to get ISKCON going in Brazil. And that was devotees from Hawaii in 1973, in fact. And he said, well, we want to get you to Brazil. I'll talk to the authorities and see. And then Mohan Vilas, who many of us know from his time living here in San Diego, he just spent a month or two in Ecuador, his home. And when he came back to Hawaii, he says, Maharaj, you'll love it if we bring you to Ecuador. The devotees will love you. So I'm thinking, maybe in my dotage I will have an opportunity to fulfill that instruction. And sometimes just as we see with Giriraj Maharaj, you can consult with the guru if he's available, or she, and say, I'm having I find myself a little confused about how to prioritize my different aspects of my service. Maybe you can give me some advice. It's a real personal thing. Krishna consciousness is very personal. Is that okay? Anyone in interweb lands before the hook comes? 5, 4. Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. Grantha Raja Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai.